The thin, recycled air of Xylos Station always carried the faint scent of ozone and old filters, a smell Dr. Kalen Valerius had come to associate with the bittersweet taste of impending discovery. He knelt in the dust of Cygnus Beta, a moon, whose only claim to fame was its utter desolation and the baffling architect ruins buried beneath its crust. Before him, a newly excavated section of wall pulsed with faint internal light as his portable scanner traced its surface. Glyphs, intricate and alien, swirled across the obsidian-like material, symbols that had resisted translation for the entirety of his career. "Anything, Kalen?" The voice, tinny through his helmet comm, belonged to Commander Rex Corbin, chief of this lonely outpost and captain of their equally lonely transport, the Antiquarian. Kalen sighed, the sound amplified in his helmet. "The same sequence, Rex. The star breathes shallow and the great filter descends. Or something equally poetic and unhelpful. It's a lament, I'm sure of it, but the technical specifics, they dance away from me." He tapped a particularly complex glyph. "This one, it's pivotal. I feel it." He'd felt it for 6 standard years, ever since his disastrous misinterpretation of the Lyraean texts had led a stellar mandate survey team on a multi-million credit wild goose chase. That failure clung to him like Cygnus Beta's fine dust, making him second-guess every intuition, yet driving him with a relentless, quiet desperation. Xylos Station, a cluster of prefabricated domes clinging to the edge of a vast, impact-hollowed crater, was humanity's most remote archaeological dig. Situated in the Elysian Drift, a sparse nebula that was more void than starlight, its funding was as thin as its atmosphere. Their primary star, Elysia, had been inexplicably dimming for the past decade, a phenomenon that had recently taken a more alarming turn. "Well, you've got 3 more days to feel it," Corbin's voice crackled back, devoid of accusation but heavy with pragmatism. "Then the stellar mandate's great filter descends on us in the form of an evacuation. Order! The Stellivore is coming, Kalen." This time the poetry is literal. Kalen winced. The Stellivore, a name whispered in awe and terror across the galactic comlines. Colossal, star-consuming entities, more cosmic weather patterns than living beings, or so the official mandate xenologists claimed. They drifted through the void, their arrival heralding the slow, inexorable death of stellar systems. And one was now confirmed to be lumbering towards the Elysian Drift. Standard procedure, abandoned ship. There was no fighting a Stellivore, there was only running. Miles away, within the humming, slightly chaotic confines of Xylos Station's main engineering bay, Juno's sparky Mikil cursed as a diagnostic panel threw a shower of angry orange sparks. "Scrap-heaped capacitor-blowing son of a glitch," she muttered, yanking a charred component from its socket. Juno, barely 25 but with an intuitive grasp of energy systems that baffled her elders, was the only reason Xylos Station hadn't vibrated itself into dust years ago. She wasn't particularly interested in Kalen's ancient glyphs as language, but the thought of how the architects powered their civilization, that was a puzzle that made her fingers itch. Everything. "All right down there, Sparky?" Corbin's voice, now on the internal station comm, was laced with weary amusement. "Just coaxing the atmospheric regulators to not imitate a dying star, Commander," Juno retorted, grabbing a multi-welder. "This station runs on hope and my personal collection of percussive maintenance tools. You know, the usual." "Did Kalen find the meaning of life in his rock collection yet?" "Not yet," Corbin replied. "But the evacuation notice means he's running out of time to try. Make sure the Antiquarian's pre-flight checks are green. I don't want any surprises when we lift." Juno grunted an affirmative. The Antiquarian, their small, long-range research vessel, was another piece of aging tech she kept flying through sheer willpower and inventive bypasses. The idea of abandoning the architect ruins, with their tantalizing hints of unimaginable power sources and gravitational manipulation, felt like leaving a feast untouched. The Stellivore was a problem, sure, a very big, star-eating problem. But the thought of the advanced technology being left behind was, to Juno, the real tragedy. Kalen returned to the station as Cygnus Beta's twin, smaller moon, began its ascent, casting long, distorted shadows across the plains. He found Corbin in the small command dome, staring at the latest astronomical plot. Elysia, their sun, was visibly fainter on the display, its light signature tinged with an unhealthy pallor. "The mandate's preliminary report came through," Corbin said without preamble, gesturing to the screen. "The Stellivore is designated SV-734. They estimate its arrival at the Elysian heliopause in 78 standard hours. Full system evacuation to be completed in 72. Kalen nodded slowly, the weight of the inevitable pressing down. "They won't even consider trying to understand it, will they? Just label it a catastrophe and run." Corbin turned, his weathered face etched with lines of old battles and older compromises. "Kalen, it drains stars. What's to understand? It's a force of nature. You can't reason with a hurricane. You just get out of its way." "Perhaps," Kalen murmured, his gaze drifting to the image of the architect glyph sequence still, burned into his mind's eye. Or perhaps the architects knew a way to speak the hurricane's language. But even to his own ears, it sounded like the plea of a desperate man, clinging to echoes in a dying drift. The great filter was, indeed, descending, and Xylos Station was directly in its path. The arrival of the stellar mandate vessel was as ostentatious as it was unwelcome. The Cathar Dominion cruiser, Imperious Vow, a warship whose polished obsidian hull seemed to absorb the already dim light of Elysia, slid into orbit around Cygnus Beta with arrogant grace. Cathar vessels were renowned for their advanced technology, and their commander's equally advanced sense of self-importance. Prelate Vorkos, the official tasked with overseeing the Elysian Drift's evacuation, proved to be no exception. His holographic image shimmered into existence on Xylos Station's main view screen. Tall, slender, with chitinous facial plates that rippled subtly as he spoke, his voice a low, resonant baritone that carried an undercurrent of impatience. "Commander Corbin, I trust your archaeological endeavor is prepared for immediate cessation and evacuation as per Stellar Mandate Directive 7.4 Alpha." The term archaeological endeavor was delivered with a distinct lack of enthusiasm. Corbin, standing ramrod straight, met the prelate's gaze. "Xylos Station will be ready, Prelate Vorkos. We are currently finalizing preparations." "See that you are," Vorkos intoned. "The Cathar Dominion does not tolerate tardiness, especially when faced with cosmic inevitabilities like the Stellivore. Your research, while no doubt fascinating to your species, is inconsequential in this context." Kalen, listening from the side, felt a familiar surge of frustration. He stepped forward. "Prelate Vorkos, I am Dr. Kalen Valerius, lead researcher. The architect ruins on Cygnus Beta are unique. We've recently uncovered a primary monolith structure that shows unusual energy signatures. If we could have just a few more days." Vorkos's head tilted, a gesture that somehow conveyed immense disdain. "Dr. Valerius, your monolith will be cosmic dust along with this entire system once SV-734 arrives. The mandate's decision is final. Your unique ruins are irrelevant. You have your orders." The hologram flickered out, leaving a lingering silence in the command dome. "Charming fellow," Juno muttered, having patched into the command dome's audio feed from engineering. "Does he practice being that pompous, or does it just come naturally to the Cathar?" "It's their way, Sparky," Corbin said, sighing. "They're an old race. They think they've seen it all." He looked at Kalen. "Sorry, Kalen. I knew it was a long shot." Kalen nodded, his jaw tight. Irrelevant. That's what his life's work was to the Cathar, to the mandate. Just another speck of dust. But the monolith, it wasn't just a stone. The repeating glyph sequence he'd found etched around its base, the one that mirrored the lament on the walls. The star breathes shallow, and the great filter descends. It felt less like a historical record, and more like an active warning, or perhaps even an instruction. Later, while ostensibly running final diagnostics on the seismic sensors deployed near the ruin entrance, Juno found herself drawn to a small, oddly shaped architect artifact Kalen's team had unearthed. A polished, fist-sized dodecahedron that hummed with a barely perceptible internal vibration. It was supposed to be inert. Against regulations, she'd brought it back to her workshop, fascinated by its impossible density. Now on a hunch, she activated her handheld sonic emitter, a tool she normally used for detecting microfractures in hull plating, and ran it through a low-frequency sweep near the artifact. As the frequency hit 33.7 Hz, the dodecahedron pulsed with a soft, internal blue light, and her nearby energy distortion sensor, a home-brewed gadget she used to detect power fluctuations, spiked erratically. The light faded as the frequency passed. Intrigued, she tried it again. Same result. A specific sonic frequency elicited an energy response. Huh, she murmured, a grin spreading across her face. You're not so inert after all, are you, old-timer? She glanced at the schematics of the main monolith chamber displayed on her secondary screen. The chamber was deep, heavily shielded. If a small artifact reacted this way, what would the massive monolith do if tickled with the right sound? Kalen, meanwhile, was back in the digital archives, staring at the glyph sequence. He'd cross-referenced it with every known architect linguistic database. The individual glyphs had tentative translations: star, breath, filter, descent, lament. But the syntax, the intent, eluded him. Prelate Vorkos's dismissal echoed in his ears, fueling a stubborn fire. He wouldn't let it be irrelevant. He would understand it, even if it was the last thing he did before Elysia's light was snuffed out for good. The mandate's decree had been issued, but for Kalen Valerius the real deadline was the one set by his own conscience. The Stellivore arrived not with a roar, but with a suffocating whisper that resonated through the very fabric of the Elysian Drift. Long-range sensors first depicted it as a distortion, a ripple in the interstellar medium. Then, as it drew closer, its true form began to resolve. A colossal nebula-like entity, a swirling vortex of cosmic dust and captured stellar matter, kilometers wide. At its core, a point of impossible blackness pulsed, and from this heart extended the harbinger proboscis, a shimmering, ethereal tendril of concentrated gravitational force, already latched onto the distant, dying star of Elysia. On Xylos Station, the effects were immediate and unnerving. Lights flickered and dimmed as the station's power core struggled against inexplicable energy drains. Gravitational anomalies made walking a subtly nauseating experience. Alarms chirped intermittently as sensitive equipment registered the key. Growing tidal stresses. SV-734 has breached the system's heliopause, Corbin announced, his voice grim, his eyes fixed on the tactical display in the command dome. The image of the Stellivore was terrifying in its silent, implacable majesty. It's begun active energy draw from Elysia. Prelate Vorkos reports all other colonial outposts in the drift are reporting critical power failures. Evacuation is chaotic. His gaze flickered towards Kalen. Time to pack up the history books, Doctor. The present just got very loud. Kalen watched the display, a knot of dread tightening in his stomach. The sheer scale of the Stellivore was humbling, terrifying. It made his obsession with dusty glyphs seem ludicrous. Yet the lament, the star breathes shallow, and the great filter descends, echoed in his mind with renewed urgency. This was the great filter. He found Juno in engineering, not packing, but hunched over a console displaying a complex waveform analysis. She was pale, a smudge of grease on her cheek, but her eyes were bright with an almost feverish intensity. Sparky, we need to prep the antiquarian for immediate departure. Forget the station diagnostics. Juno waved a dismissive hand, not looking up. Almost got it, the monolith chamber, Kalen, it's reactive. Remember that little dodecahedron? It sang at 33.7 Hz. I scaled it up. Built a focused emitter using the deep scan seismic array. Just gave the big boy in the ruins a little nudge at what I think is its primary resonant frequency. Before, Kalen could reprimand her for unauthorized, potentially dangerous experimentation. An alert sounded from one of his own passive ruin sensors he'd left active. He quickly pulled up the feed on Juno's secondary screen. Deep within the subterranean architect ruins, the massive, eons-old monolith, previously inert stone, was now suffused with a faint internal luminescence. A ghostly blue light pulsed, rhythmically from within its core, and a complex, low-amplitude energy signature radiated outwards. "Juno, what did you do?" Kaelin breathed, staring at the screen. "Just played it a little tune," she said, a triumphant grin finally breaking through. "And I think it liked it. The energy signature is incredibly complex, layered, almost like music. The monolith's glow was subtle, almost imperceptible from the surface, but Kaelin's specialized sensors, designed to pick up the faintest traces of architect technology, registered it clearly. He looked at the pulsing light, then at the glyph sequence he'd been wrestling with. Suddenly, the abstract symbols seemed to snap into a new kind of focus. The lament, the filter, the descent. What if it wasn't just a description, but a key? A key to a song the monolith was meant to sing. Corbin's voice cut through the calm. "Kaelin, Juno, get to the ship. Vorkos is on my back and Elysia's. Light just dipped another 5%. That thing is literally eating our sun for breakfast. We leave in 1 hour with or without your full cooperation." The approaching void felt tangible now, a cold pressure against the station's hull, a visible dimming of their world. But in the heart of the ruins, an ancient stone had just begun to glow, awakened by a human engineer's rebellious curiosity, and a human linguist was starting to believe he might finally understand its silent, millennia-old song. The faint rhythmic glow from the architect monolith captured on Kaelin's sensor feed acted as a lodestone for his scattered thoughts. Juno's tune had elicited a response, but it was faint, undirected. The glyph sequence he'd wrestled with for so long, the star breathes shallow and the great filter descends, suddenly clicked into place with a startling intuitive clarity. It wasn't a lament or a technical schematic in the traditional sense, it was both. It was a phrase, a resonant signature, a key to unlocking a specific function. "Juno," Kaelin said, his voice urgent as he raced back towards engineering. Corbin's 1-hour deadline ticking ominously. "The glyphs. The sequence isn't just descriptive, it is the primary harmonic. The lament is the core frequency. The filter and descent are modulation patterns, phase shifts." Juno, who had been reluctantly starting to shut down her experimental rig, paused, her eyes widening. "You mean, the words are the notes? The actual operating code?" "Precisely," Kaelin exclaimed, pulling up the glyph sequence on her main console. "I can give you the exact resonant values, the cadence, the architectural structure of the sound. But your seismic array is too crude for this. It's like trying to play a violin with a sledgehammer. We need something with finesse, something that can project complex, layered sonics with absolute precision." Juno's gaze flickered to the schematics of Xylos Station's main communications array, a powerful deep space transceiver currently being prepped for shutdown. A reckless, brilliant spark lit her eyes. The main comms dish, its wave generators are designed for hyperdense information bursts. If I bypass the transponder coders and patch in a direct multi-channel audio driver, reroute the primary amplifiers. She was already typing furiously, muttering about power relays and phase coherence. "It's insane. It'll probably fry half the systems, but it might just give us the control and amplification we need." "Commander Corbin," Kaelin broke into, "the comm channel. We need more time, and we need to use the main communications array. Juno believes she can modify it to project a specific sonic frequency directly at the architect monolith." Corbin's reply was laced with exasperation and disbelief. "You want to do what? Kaelin, that array is for talking to other starships, not serenading ancient alien rocks. And we have less than an hour before the Cathar cruisers currently babysitting us decide to use us for target practice if we're not on our way." "Rex, please," Kaelin urged, the formality of commander forgotten. I know this is a long shot, perhaps the longest in human history, but the monolith responded to Juno's initial probe. "If we can broadcast the correct harmonic sequence, the one embedded in these glyphs, I believe it might do something significant. Something the architects intended." A long silence stretched over the comm, punctuated only by the increasingly frequent groans of the station's structure under the Stellivores' gravitational influence. Finally, Corbin's voice returned, heavy with resignation and a sliver of something Kalen couldn't quite identify, perhaps a lifetime of following orders warring with a stubborn, buried hope. Sparky, can you actually do this? And can you do it without blowing up what's left of my station? Theoretically, yes to the first, probably no to the second, but hey, we're evacuating anyway, right? Juno quipped, though her focused frown indicated the immense complexity of the task. Give me 30 minutes, Kalen, get me those frequency values. Now. What followed was a blur of controlled chaos. Kalen translated the intricate glyph patterns into raw numerical data. Frequencies, durations, overlaps, the very mathematics of an ancient alien song. Juno, with a surgeon's precision and a daredevil's abandon, rewired the heart of Xylos Station's primary communication system. Power conduits sparked, coolant hissed, and warning alarms blared, only to be swiftly silenced by Juno's flying fingers. Finally, she stepped back, wiping sweat from her brow with a greasy hand. Okay, maestro, the orchestra is tuned. The comms dish is slaved to your frequency inputs and aimed directly at the geometric center of the monolith chamber. Give the word. Just then, Prelate Vorkos's imperious voice cut through the station-wide comms. Xylos Station, your allocated time has expired. You will launch for evacuation rendezvous point Delta 7 immediately. Failure to comply will be met with corrective action. The imperious vow does not issue idle threats. On the tactical display, the Cathar cruiser shifted its orientation, its weapon ports subtly aligning. Corbin's voice was grim. Kalen, Juno. It's now or never, and it better be spectacular. Kalen took a deep breath, his gaze fixed on the architect glyphs, a whisper across millennia. He nodded to Juno. Begin the broadcast. Juno hit the activation key. Deep beneath the station, the repurposed communications array hummed with immense focused power and unleashed a silent symphony of precisely modulated sonic vibrations towards the heart of the ancient ruins. The architect monolith, a forgotten sentinel from a bygone age, began to resonate, not with a faint glow this time, but with a brilliant, sustained pulse of intricate light, a silent shout of pure, coherent energy that lanced upwards, out from the barren moon of Cygnus Beta, and into the path of the encroaching Stellivore. The coherent wave of energy, a complex tapestry of light and modulated sonic vibrations born from ancient architect design and desperate human ingenuity, erupted from Cygnus Beta. It was invisible to the naked eye, yet it carried an immense, focused power that sliced through the distorted space of the Elysian Drift, striking the colossal Stellivore directly on its shimmering, star-draining harbinger proboscis. On the command deck of Xylos Station, Kalen, Juno, and Corbin watched, their sensor displays in breathless, terrified anticipation. There was no explosion, no violent reaction from the cosmic behemoth. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing seemed to happen at all. The Stellivore continued its inexorable advance, Elysia's light still visibly dimming under its influence. Prelate. Vorkos's voice, dripping with cold fury, began to form on the comms. Xylos Station, this is your final. Then, it happened. The Stellivore paused. Its ponderous, system-consuming advance stuttered, and then ceased altogether. The ethereal glow of its harbinger proboscis, previously focused with leech-like intensity upon Elysia, flickered and dimmed. The immense gravitational distortions that had been racking Xylos Station lessened perceptibly. The very fabric of the Stellivore's nebula-like form seemed to shimmer, its chaotic internal light patterns shifting, coalescing into something more ordered, as if the entity were focusing, listening. What in the void is happening? Juno whispered, her usual bravado replaced by sheer, unadulterated awe. Her fingers flew across her console, confirming the impossible readings. The architect's signal was stable, the monolith was broadcasting, and the Stellivore was, against all known behavior and cosmic law, holding perfectly still. Kalen could only stare, his mind reeling. The lament, the key. It hadn't been a weapon. It had been a signal. A greeting, a warning, a statement of presence. He didn't know, but the effect was undeniable. It recognized the signal. He stammered, his voice choked with emotion. The architects, they knew how to communicate with these things. On the main view screen of the imperious vow, Prelate Vorkos watched his own sensor arrays with an expression that, for the first time, bordered on something other than arrogance. His chitinous facial plates were rigid, his multifaceted eyes wide. Cathar science, millennia of accumulated knowledge, had classified Stellivores as mindless primal forces, akin to black holes or supernovae, to be studied from a safe distance, and above all, avoided. They did not pause. They did not react to anything save the raw energy of stars. Prelate, his science officer reported, his own voice tight with disbelief. SV-734 has ceased all forward momentum. Energy drain from the Elysian primary has dropped by 80%. The unknown energy signature originating from Xylos Station, it appears to be interacting directly with the Stellivores' core matrix. The patterns they are not hostile, Prelate. They are complex, almost dialogic. Vorkos slowly turned his gaze from his readouts to the image of the small, insignificant human station on the barren moon below. These primitive, emotional beings, with their chaotic methods and their nonsensical obsession with dead civilizations, what had they done? He opened a channel, his voice no longer dripping with condescension but sharp with an urgent, bewildered demand. Xylos Station, report. What is the nature of this transmission? Cease it at once and explain your actions. Corbin, his face a mask of stone, stepped forward. He had seen the impossible. He had seen a cosmic hurricane brought to a standstill by a linguist's hunch and an engineer's reckless brilliance. His decision was instantaneous, born from a career spent making tough calls in impossible situations. Negative, Prelate Vorkos, Corbin stated, his voice calm and steady, resonating with newfound authority. Xylos Station is currently engaged in an action that appears to be mitigating the Stellivore threat to this system. We will maintain this broadcast as long as it proves effective. You are welcome to observe. He cut the channel before Vorkos could reply, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips. Juno let out a whoop. You tell him, old man. Kalen simply sagged against a console, a profound bone-deep relief washing over him, quickly followed by a dawning terror. They had poked the largest beast in the known universe. And for now, unbelievably, it had stopped to listen. The silence of the Stellivore was more terrifying, more potent, than any roar could have been. The Stellivore remained suspended in the void, a silent, attentive giant. The architect monolith on Cygnus Beta, powered by Xylos Station's straining generators, continued its ceaseless broadcast. The ancient lament, the harmonic key that had pierced millennia of cosmic indifference. Hours crawled by. The crew of Xylos Station, running on adrenaline and stale nutrient bars, monitored their instruments, their hope warring with a primal fear. Kalen, working with Juno, pored over the complex feedback from the monolith. It's not just a single, repeating phrase, he realized, tracing the intricate energy patterns. There are subtle variations, responses from the monolith itself, almost as if it's adjusting the signal based on the Stellivore's proximity or some inaudible feedback from it. The architects didn't just build a beacon, they built an interactive system. So it's less like a recorded announcement and more like a cosmic doorbell that knows how to hold a conversation, Juno mused, rapidly coding algorithms to analyze the shifting harmonics. If it's a language, we're only broadcasting the first word. Prelate Vorkos, aboard the imperious vow, had been silent for an unprecedented length of time. His initial shock had given way to a frantic exchange of encrypted data with Cathar Command and the Stellar Mandate's Emergency Science Council. The implications of what he was witnessing were galaxy-shattering. Stellivores were fundamental, constants like gravity or the speed of light. They were not supposed to be influenceable, especially not by a barely spacefaring race using forgotten technology. Then, as the Elysian system's primary hung like a dim ember in the sky, the Stellivore moved. It wasn't a resumption of its attack. Instead, with a ponderous, majestic grace, the harbinger proboscis began to retract from Elysia, The faint leech-like glow around the star faded further, and the star itself, though still terribly weakened, seemed to exhale, its light output stabilizing, even infinitesimally increasing. The Stellivore, its immense form shimmering, then began a slow, deliberate course correction. It wasn't fleeing. It wasn't damaged. It was, quite simply, choosing to go around the Elysian Drift. It's bypassing us, Corbin breathed from the command chair, his voice hoarse. It's actually leaving the system untouched. Kalen watched, tears welling in his eyes, not of sorrow, but of an overwhelming, cathartic understanding. The signal, it must be some kind of marker. A do not disturb sign on a cosmic scale. The architects weren't just lamenting, they were designating, protecting. He looked at Juno, a true unrestrained smile finally gracing his features. We spoke the language of the stars, Juno. Or at least we remembered the first words. Aboard the imperious vow, Prelate Vorkos gave the order to stand down from alert status. He watched the Stellivores' slow, deliberate departure on his main view screen, his sophisticated Cathar mind struggling to reconcile what he had witnessed with centuries of ingrained doctrine. He opened a channel to Xylos Station, his tone, devoid of its earlier arrogance, replaced by a grudging, almost stunned respect. Xylos Station, Commander Corbin, the stellar mandate acknowledges your unconventional intervention. The Stellivore SV-734 is confirmed to be altering its trajectory away from the Elysian Drift. You are requested to maintain your broadcast until it has cleared the system. And then, you are to prepare a full report. A very full report. He paused, then added almost as an afterthought, your persistence, Dr. Valerius, and your technical aptitude, Specialist Mikhail, have been noted. The channel closed. Juno let out a shaky laugh. Noted. High praise from old Poker Face. Corbin leaned back in his chair, the tension finally draining from his shoulders. I think, he said slowly, we just bought this system a new lease on life. They had done more than that. They had challenged an absolute, and the absolute had blinked. The monolith continued its silent song, a testament to a long-dead civilization, now reawakened by a small band of humans who dared to listen to echoes in the void, and in doing so, taught a small corner of the galaxy that some forces of nature might just be willing to hold a conversation, if only one knew the right words to say. In the days that followed the Stellivores' unprecedented detour, a strange calm settled over the Elysian Drift. The system's dying star, Elysia, no longer leached of its vital energies, began a slow, almost imperceptible recovery. Its light, though still faint, held a new warmth, a promise of returning vitality. On Cygnus Beta, Xylos Station, once a forgotten outpost on the verge of abandonment, became the unlikely epicenter of a galactic paradigm shift. The stellar mandate, shaken from its comfortable dogma, descended upon the Elysian Drift, not with evacuation fleets but with its finest scientific minds, its most advanced research vessels, and a bewildering array of questions. Kalen Valerius, the obsessive academic once haunted by past failures, found himself addressing councils of renowned xenoarchaeologists and astrophysicists, his theories on architect harmonic linguistics suddenly the most sought-after knowledge in the galaxy. The Valerius postulate, as it was tentatively named, suggested that many precursor civilizations might have interacted with the universe on a level of resonant harmonics, influencing cosmic phenomena in ways previously dismissed as impossible. Juno, Sparky Mikhail, the rebellious tech tinkerer, was hailed as a prodigy. Engineers from across the mandate marveled at her audacious modifications to Xylos Station's antiquated systems, her intuitive grasp of energy dynamics, and her ability to coax unprecedented performance from forgotten architect artifacts. She was offered positions at the mandate's most prestigious research institutes, complete with state-of-the-art labs and unlimited resources. She accepted, on the condition that she could bring her own toolkit and retain creative control over experimental power applications. Commander Rex Corbin, the stoic station chief, became a quiet legend. His calm leadership, His unwavering faith in his unconventional team and his courageous defiance of Prelate Vorkos's initial orders were lauded as an example of ideal command under extreme pressure. He was offered promotions, prestigious postings, but he chose to remain with Xylos Station, overseeing its transformation into a permanent, heavily funded research facility dedicated to understanding architect technology and the Valerius Mikhail effect. Even Prelate Vorkos of the Cathar, Dominion underwent a subtle transformation. Publicly, he maintained the Cathar's characteristic reserve, but privately, he became a reluctant champion for a more open-minded approach to cosmic mysteries. He conceded in carefully worded reports to the Stellar Mandate High Council that certain younger species, particularly humans, demonstrate an unpredictable yet occasionally valuable capacity for intuitive leaps and unconventional problem-solving that may complement more established methodologies. The Cathar, for the first time in millennia, began to listen a little more closely to the whispers from the galactic fringe. Xylos Station, no longer a dusty, underfunded relic, buzzed with new life. Scientists and researchers from dozens of species flocked to Cygnus Beta, eager to study the architect monolith now designated a galactic heritage site. The language of the stars, as Kalin had called it, was just beginning to be deciphered, but its first translated phrase, the signal that had turned away a Stellivore, had already rewritten the known laws of the universe. Kalin, Juno, and Corbin often found themselves on the observation deck of the newly expanded Xylos Station, looking out at the slowly brightening Elysian star. They were an unlikely trio of heroes, a linguist who had found his voice in the echoes of the ancient past, an engineer who had played a symphony on instruments of her own creation, and a commander who had trusted them when no one else would. They hadn't sought accolades or fame. They had simply refused to accept the inevitable, choosing instead to listen, to experiment, to dare. The Stellivores still roamed the galaxy, vast and mysterious. But now there was a new resonance in the void, a flicker of understanding, a possibility of communication, a testament to the small group of humans on a forgotten moon who had taught the galaxy that even the most terrifying silence might be broken by the right song, and that sometimes the greatest power lay not in shouting down the storm, but in learning to speak its language. The age of accidental heroes had not just dawned, it had found its voice.